The moment I saw the gleaming silver Porsche 911 perched across my driveway, its engine ticking in the midday sun, my heart sank with a bitter surge. It wasn't just any car, it was Karen's trophy, a symbol of her self-appointed superiority in our little gated community. She'd plowed it there without a word of apology, as though asphalt space belonged to her alone. Her voice crackled through the fence hours earlier when I'd stepped outside to water my roses. "You know the rules," she'd hissed, brow arched, lips painted crimson. "Driveways for residents, not your fancy decor." I'd politely reminded her that mine was the corner lot, that her trespass infringed on my property rights. She'd scoffed, revved her engine and parked anyway, straddling the yellow line like a monarch claiming new territory. That high-pitched laugh of hers still rang in my ears as I closed the gate behind me and retreated indoors, steeling myself for the inevitable HOA complaints. But hiding behind due process wasn't my style. Instead of dialing the board, I hatched a plan driven by old-fashioned ingenuity and a dash of righteous fury. I spent the afternoon measuring chlorine levels, sourcing pool pumps, and consulting with Marcus, my neighbor who happened to be a former marine mechanic with an expertise in hydraulic systems. By sunset, our covert operation was in motion. While Karen fretted over her afternoon mani-pedi, we siphoned his trailer into her pool house, rigged a hose line to her filtration system, and set a slow drip that would soon render her prized sports car buoyant. By nightfall, the pool glimmered under the moonlight, the car's tail lights glowing like ominous embers beneath the water's surface. From my vantage point behind the shrubs, I watched through binoculars as the first bubbles rose around the Porsche's doors. Karen's world, so tightly controlled and manicured, was about to be baptized in poetic justice. Dawn revealed the aftermath in all its dramatic splendor. The pool's water lapped at the deck as if mocking her, and the Porsche bobbed with gentle sways, its hood half submerged in a tableau of churning turquoise. Karen arrived, heels clicking like thunderclaps, hair coiffed as if for a gala, only to freeze dead center on her own turf. Her Chanel tote slipped from her grasp and fell into the shallow end, water seeping up around its leather seams. Her eyes darted between the floating car and the wooden board propped near the pool ladder. "If you cross me, I cross you," it read, ink bleeding in the humid air. She tried to scream, but the sound died in her throat, replaced by sobs that rattled her tiny frame. Neighbors spilled onto their patios, cell phones raised. Marcus appeared behind her, suitably garbed in a DIY jumpsuit, holding a roll of blue tarp. "Afternoon, Karen," he drawled. "Hope you don't mind a little renovation." She turned on him, but rage had drained her voice. At the next HOA meeting, the board chair's swiveling glare was a prelude to humiliation. I presented the evidence-stamped video of her illegal parking, the invoice for pool repair, and a certified letter demanding compensation for water damage. Karen's face, once a portrait of unassailable confidence, now trembled under the clubhouse's fluorescent lights. She stammered through excuses about creative landscaping and artistic installations, but Mrs. Patel, a retired judge, cut her off with a measured look. Refusing to recognize due process was one thing, destroying someone's gate or vehicle was another. The board voted unanimously to fine her the equivalent cost of replacing the Porsche's electrical system, and to suspend her parking privileges indefinitely. Her protests were drowned by the clatter of gavels and sarcastic applause. But that barely scratched the surface of her downfall. A week later, my elderly neighbor Mrs. Garcia revealed she'd captured audio of Karen boasting about hiding HOA dues in her safe to fund cosmetic work on that very pool house. The leak went viral on our neighborhood forum, screenshots of messages, spreadsheets tracking diverted funds, and even a hastily recorded voicemail from Karen to a contractor promising secret cash payments. The local HOA attorney issued a legal notice demanding restitution and threatening civil charges for embezzlement. Karen's empire of entitlement crumbled as fellow homeowners demanded a full audit. The same board members who once parroted her pronouncements now spoke of integrity, transparency, and community trust, none of which Karen had ever valued. In an unexpected twist, the new HOA president, an unexpected hero named Darnell, who'd always been overshadowed by Karen's domineering personality, rose to the occasion. He organized a neighborhood volunteer day to repair pool filters, repaint fences, and plant native shrubs where Karen's lavish hydrangeas once stood. Under his guidance, residents donated time and funds to transform the pool area into a communal splash zone for children, complete with safety rails and lifeguard training sessions. The Porsche floated on as a peculiar art installation until local authorities towed it away, concluding it posed environmental hazards. Karen was left to sell it at a loss, her fortune sinking faster than the vehicle in that chlorinated abyss. Through it all, I remained vigilant yet composed. I walked my dog along the newly restored garden path, nodding politely at the neighbors who once hesitated in my presence. I passed Karen's empty driveway, now conspicuously free of unauthorized vehicles, and offered a quiet smile to the empty air. The saga had begun with a trespass and escalated into a lesson on the cost of unchecked arrogance. It proved that property rights weren't mere lines on paper but boundaries deserving fierce defense. Yet it also showed that true justice can cultivate community healing, not perpetual vendettas. So here I stand, pool water gleaming behind me and fresh rose fragrance in the breeze, and I wonder, when someone violates your space, do you seek measured redress or daring retaliation? Is turning the tables an act of justice or escalation? Share your thoughts below. The calm that settled over our cul-de-sac in the weeks following the Porsche fiasco felt almost surreal, as if the neighborhood had collectively exhaled after holding its breath through an unexpected siege of drama. Mornings began with the soft hum of lawnmowers and the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog, rather than the revving engines of entitlement. I found myself lingering over my coffee on the front porch, watching sunlight dapple through newly pruned magnolia leaves, a quiet reminder of how swiftly things can shift when people choose courage over complacency. Yet beneath that tranquility lay the echoes of the battle we'd fought, the sputter of chlorine pumps that once heralded poetic justice, the distant memory of Karen's anguished shriek as her Ferrari-esque machine bobbed helplessly in her own pool, and the unexpected solidarity forged among neighbors who'd once hesitated to speak up. It was clear that, for better or worse, our street had been irrevocably changed. At first, I worried that my part in the spectacle would cast me as a vigilante or troublemaker, but the dynamic was far richer. Families once isolated by fences and silent resentments began to gather in driveways, trading stories of minor grievances and whispered victories. The Martinez kids organized an impromptu lemonade stand at the corner, donations earmarked for pool house repairs and community events. Mrs. Patel invited everyone to a weekend garden workshop, teaching neighbors how to cultivate native plants that required less upkeep and symbolized a shared commitment to stewardship rather than ownership. Even the HOA board, pragmatic souls who'd once bent to Karen's demands, embraced a newfound ethos of collaboration, inviting homeowners to propose projects and vote on budgets at open meetings. Where there had been fear of reprisal, there grew a sense of mutual respect. Forgiveness, however, remained a private journey. Karen, her pride in shambles, retreated from public view. Rumors swirled that she'd moved in with her sister temporarily, while attempting to sell the pool house and salvage what remained of her reputation. I passed her vacant property on my evening walks, noting the overgrown grass and wilted hydrangeas, a tableau of neglect that mirrored her fall from grace. Part of me wondered if she'd learned her lesson, but another part saw the depth of her denial, the way she refused to heed the very boundaries she'd once trampled. In that tension between repentance and stubbornness lay a sobering truth. Not everyone emerges from downfall humbled. Some harden themselves further. One afternoon, while tinkering in my garage, I heard a knock at the gate. Expecting a delivery, I was surprised to see Karen standing on the other side, shoulders slumped, clutching a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. Her gaze was guarded, vulnerability flickering beneath the armor of her tailored blazer. I don't expect you to forgive me," she began, voice low and tentative, "but I wanted to return something." She lifted the corner of the box to reveal a handcrafted wooden sign, the very emblem of our conflict. Carved into the board in neat script were the words "Boundaries build community," a phrase she'd overheard at the HOA meeting and evidently taken to heart. She placed it at my feet and turned away without waiting for a response. The gesture, awkward and sincere, struck me harder than any sledgehammer blow. I tucked the sign under my arm and met her eyes briefly, offering the slightest nod before closing the gate. That evening I propped the new sign above my front door, its carved letters illuminated by the porch light. It wasn't a trophy of victory but a reminder. Community requires both resolve and humility. The sentiment resonated with neighbors, who often paused to read it as they walked by or parked their cars within legal confines. The HOA board even adopted it unofficially as our new motto, printing it on newsletters and framing it in the clubhouse foyer. In that moment, the conflict that began with metal and water transformed into something more enduring, a shared commitment to coexistence rooted in respect. As autumn approached, the street took on a golden glow. Children scrambled to collect fallen leaves for art projects. Couples strolled between houses sharing hot cider, and the air resonated with laughter rather than whispers of scandal. My gate, once a battleground, stood silent and secure, its surveillance camera now rarely capturing anything more dramatic than the mail carrier's daily rounds. Occasionally, I'd catch a glimpse of the old wooden sign tucked into the corner of my porch, the words, "If you cross me, I cross you," now a relic of a bygone skirmish. I would smile at the transformation, the way a phrase of vengeance had been supplanted by one of unity. In these quieter moments, I reflected on what had driven me to action. It wasn't mere spite or a thirst for revenge, it was the conviction that dignity and property must be defended, even when the transgression seems trivial. The swirl of events revealed how quickly small violations can escalate into community-wide crises when left unchecked. It also showed me that confrontation needn't be cruel. It can be strategic, proportional, and ultimately constructive. By documenting evidence, enlisting allies, and channeling energy into a solution that repaired more than just a pool, I'd contributed to a broader restoration of trust. Still, questions linger. Had my retaliation been too theatrical? Could I have resolved the conflict through quieter negotiations? I think of Mrs. Garcia's tremulous gratitude when she handed over the audio recording of Karen's misappropriated dues, the relief shimmering in her eyes as truth surfaced. I recall Marcus's unwavering support, his pragmatic advice guiding me through technical hurdles. Their faith in me underscored the importance of standing firm. Yet I'm aware that not every neighbor feels comfortable with such bold measures. Some might see the spectacle and yearn for a gentler path. And so I pose this to you. When faced with a trespass that rattles your world, be it a parking infringement or a more grievous violation, do you choose swift and visible action, knowing it may divide but also inspire accountability? Or do you seek quieter diplomacy, risking the chance that your rights will be trampled again? There's no universal answer, only the courage to defend what matters and the wisdom to foster healing afterward. Share your thoughts below. Do you believe that standing up dramatically for yourself plants the seeds of a stronger community? Or does it sow discord that outlasts the initial conflict?